You finally found the perfect apartment. Small, cozy, far too cheap to be real. But from the moment you opened the door, something felt wrong. The air was cold, even with sunlight streaming through the windows. The floor creaked under your steps, and you could have sworn something was dragging down the hallway. You turned, but nothing was there. No matter where you looked, the feeling of being watched never left. On the first night, a low whisper, almost like the wind, called your name. Then came the footsteps, not yours, from the kitchen, the hallway, the walls. Nothing. Just silence. The next day, a broken mug on the floor, a handwritten note. You are not alone. Your heart races. For the first time, you realize the apartment was never truly empty. Children, Uncle Rick is going to tell you a story. You thought you had found the perfect apartment. Small, cozy, far too cheap to be real. From the very first moment you opened the door, something felt wrong. The air felt too cold, even with sunlight streaming through the window. The floor creaked under your steps, but there was another sound, almost imperceptible, something dragging down the hallway. You turned. Nothing. Yet the feeling of being watched remained, pressing on your chest with every second. That first night, the silence was broken by a low whisper, almost like the wind, but filled with intent. It called your name. Then came the footsteps, not yours, from the kitchen, the hallway, the walls. Silence returned, but the presence stayed, still, waiting. The next day, everything seemed normal. Sunlight streamed through the window. The smell of coffee filled the apartment. But something had changed. A mug, carefully placed on the table, was broken. You were sure you hadn't touched it. Opening the fridge, you found a handwritten note. You are not alone. Your heart races. For the first time, you realized the apartment was never truly empty. In the days that followed, you tried to create routines, organize your life, but the feeling of being watched never disappeared. Every displaced object felt like a warning. Every strange sound made your heart race. The shadow always moved in the darkest corners, just out of sight, but you could feel it, pulsing, breathing with you. One night, while watching TV, an intense cold swept through the apartment. The screen flickered and the walls seemed to close in, almost crushing you. Then came footsteps, quick, light, deliberate. You tried to rise, but something invisible held you to the couch. The footsteps stopped abruptly, and a deep whisper cut through the silence. "Leave." You swallowed hard. There was no wind, no one there. Yet the voice seemed to come from every corner at once, pressing on your chest. You tried to call someone, but your phone had no signal. The landline, once ringing on its own, now remained silent, cold, motionless. You began noticing disturbing patterns, objects disappearing, only to reappear in impossible places. The kitchen door you had locked opened by itself. Tiny footprints appeared in the hallway, leading to the bedroom door, and vanished there. Every time you tried to ignore it, the presence became more audible. Whispers, scratching on the walls, invisible eyes seeming to follow every move. You started realizing you couldn't leave the apartment easily. Every attempt was thwarted. Keys vanished, doors closed on their own, an intense cold froze your bones. Something was determined to keep you there, trapped in a space that seemed alive. And with each passing day, the shadow drew closer, testing your limits, showing that it wasn't just watching, it was waiting. The nights became endless nightmares. The apartment seemed to shift around you. Elongated shadows, clear whispers, invisible eyes examining every move. You began hearing conversations, not human, disconnected words, yet understandable, speaking about you, though no one was there. One night you woke to being pulled out of bed by an icy chill that ran through your body. You turned and saw the shadow standing in the doorway. This time you didn't try to run. You just stared. It seemed patient, observing, analyzing. Then a single deep word came, clear. Stay. The apartment began reacting to every gesture. Objects moved on their own. Floors creaked. Doors slammed without wind. Walls whispered. Everything felt conscious. You tried to leave, but the door key vanished once again. Something new happened. The old portraits on the walls began to change. Strange people stared directly at you, frozen in expressions of fear and pain. The last portrait showed someone identical to you, but with empty eyes and an impossible smile. A terrifying detail. Each portrait aged, as if time inside the apartment flowed differently. For the first time, you realized you weren't just being watched. The apartment wanted something from you. But what? And how could you escape something not just inhabited, but alive, aware, and knowing every one of your movements? The sense of claustrophobia grew. The air felt heavy, loaded with intent. Every moment you felt each step you took was part of a larger plan, something dark that had begun long before you arrived. The days slowly turned into endless nights, and time inside the apartment no longer made sense. Hours stretched, minutes vanished. Trying to sleep meant surrendering to distant screams, footsteps that never stopped, and whispers repeating your name over and over, as if the walls themselves were learning how you sounded. Every corner hid something that moved in sync with you. When you stopped, it stopped. When you thought, it felt like something had already anticipated the thought. The apartment wasn't reacting anymore. It was predicting. One night, desperation took over. You decided to run. You opened the door to the hallway, but it wasn't the hallway anymore. Each door you opened led somewhere else. Narrow corridors, rooms that felt too deep, spaces that bent in impossible ways. The layout shifted behind you. The cold intensified, seeping into your bones, slowing your movements, draining your strength. Then you noticed the mirror in the living room. At first, your reflection looked normal, tired, pale, afraid. Then it blinked, on its own. You froze. Slowly, the reflection smiled, even though your lips never moved. The smile stretched too wide, holding for too long. Then the reflection raised its hand and pointed directly at you. Your heart pounded. What was real? What was imagined? The apartment felt like it was watching your confusion with amusement. The walls seemed to listen. The ceiling creaked softly, almost like a quiet laugh. The voices that were once whispers grew clearer, closer, nearly human but wrong, distorted, layered. They spoke together, calmly, clearly. You belong to us now. You screamed. You tried to fight. You tried to run. Nothing worked. The walls began to close in, inch by inch. The shadow spread across the apartment, crawling along the ceiling, seeping under doors, filling every corner. The light dimmed, not suddenly, but patiently, as if the darkness was being poured in. Then you felt it. Something touched your shoulder. It wasn't cold. It wasn't warm. It was presence, a weight, a certainty, a silent promise that the apartment would never leave you alone again. At exactly midnight, everything became clear. The screams stopped, the footsteps faded, the whispers fell silent, and in that terrifying calm, you understood the truth. The apartment was never empty. It was never meant to be empty. And now, it wasn't. You had become part of it. Another shadow in the corners, another voice in the walls, another presence waiting for the next door to open. Watching, listening, waiting, forever.